John Burke's Dizzy Gillespie, pronounced Gillespie, was born on October 21, 1917, and died on January 6, 1993. He was an American jazz trumpeter, bandleader, composer, educator, and singer. He was a trumpet virtuoso and improviser, building on the virtuosic style of Roy Eldridge, but adding layers of harmonic and rhythmic complexity previously unheard in jazz. His combination of musicianship, showmanship, and wit made him a leading popularizer of the new music called bebop.
His beret and horn-rimmed spectacles, scat singing, bent horn, pouched cheeks, and light-hearted personality made him an enduring icon. In the 1940s, Gillespie, together with Charlie Parker, became a major figure in the development of bebop and modern jazz. He taught and influenced many other musicians, including trumpeters Miles Davis, John Faddis, Fats Navarro, Clifford Brown, Arturo Sandoval, Lee Morgan, Chuck Mangione, and balladeer Johnny Hartman.
He won several Grammy Awards. Scott Yano wrote, "Dizzy Gillespie's contributions to jazz were huge. One of the greatest jazz trumpeters of all time, Gillespie was such a complex player that his contemporaries ended up being closer in style to Miles Davis and Fats Navarro instead. And it was not until John Faddis's emergence in the 1970s that Dizzy's style was successfully recreated. Gillespie is remembered by both critics and fans alike as one of the greatest jazz trumpeters of all time."
Early life and career. The youngest of 9 children of Lottie and James Gillespie, Dizzy Gillespie was born in Cheraw, South Carolina. His father was a local band leader, so musical instruments were made available to the children from an early age. James Gillespie died when Dizzy was only 10 years old.
Gillespie began playing the piano at the age of 4. By the time he was 12, he had taught himself how to play the trombone and the trumpet. From the night he heard his idol, Roy Eldridge, on the radio, he dreamed of becoming a jazz musician. He won a music scholarship to the Laurinburg Institute in North Carolina, where he studied for 2 years before accompanying his family when they moved to Philadelphia in 1935.
Gillespie's first professional job was with the Frank Fairfax Orchestra in 1935. He later joined the orchestras of Edgar Hayes and then Teddy Hill, replacing Frankie Newton as second trumpet in May 1937. It was with Teddy Hill's band that Gillespie made his first recording, King Porter's Stomp. In August 1937, while performing with Hayes in Washington, D.C., Gillespie met a young dancer named Lorraine Willis. She worked a Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York City performance circuit that included the Apollo Theater.
Willis was not immediately friendly, but Gillespie was attracted to her nonetheless. The two were married on May 9, 1940. Gillespie remained with Teddy Hill's band for a year, then left and began freelancing with other bands. In 1939, with the help of Lorraine Willis, Gillespie joined Cab Calloway's orchestra. He recorded one of his earliest compositions, Pickin' the Cabbage, with Calloway in 1940. After an altercation between the two men, Calloway fired Gillespie in late 1941. The incident was later recounted by Gillespie and members of Calloway's band, including Milt Hinton and Jonah Jones, in John Bach's 1997 film, The Spitball Story.
Calloway disapproved of Gillespie's mischievous humor and his adventurous approach to soloing. According to Jonah Jones, Calloway referred to it as Chinese music. During a rehearsal, someone in the band threw a spitball. Already in a bad mood, Calloway blamed Gillespie, who refused to take responsibility. In the confrontation that followed, Gillespie stabbed Calloway in the leg with a knife. Calloway suffered minor cuts on his thigh and wrist. After the two men were separated, Calloway fired Gillespie.
A few days later, Gillespie attempted to apologize, but he was dismissed. During his time with Calloway's band, Gillespie began writing big band arrangements for Woody Herman, Jimmy Dorsey, and others. He then freelanced with several bands, most notably Ella Fitzgerald's orchestra, composed of members of Chick Webb's band. Gillespie did not serve in World War II.
At his selective service interview, he reportedly told the local board, "In this stage of my life, here in the United States, whose foot has been in my ass? And so if you put me out there with a gun in my hand and tell me to shoot at the enemy, I'm liable to create a case of mistaken identity of who I might shoot." He was classified 4F. In 1943, he joined the Earl Hines Band. Composer Gunther Schuller later said,
In 1943, I heard the great Earl Hines Band, which had Bird in it and all those other great musicians. They were playing all the flatted fifth chords and modern harmonies and substitutions, and Gillespie runs in the trumpet section work. 2 years later, I read that was bop and the beginning of modern jazz. But the band never made recordings.
Gillespie himself later said, "People talk about the Hines Band being the incubator of bop." And the leading exponents of that music ended up in the Hines Band. But people also have the erroneous impression that the music was new. It was not. The music evolved from what went before. It was the same basic music. The difference was in how you got from here to here to here. Naturally, each age has got its own expression.
Bebop and the rise of modern jazz. Gillespie joined the big band of Hines's longtime collaborator, Billy Eckstine. It was as a member of Eckstine's band that he was reunited with fellow musician Charlie Parker. In 1944, Gillespie left Eckstine's band because he wanted to perform with a small combo, typically consisting of no more than 5 musicians, trumpet, saxophone, piano, bass, and drums.
Dizzy recommended Fats Navarro as his replacement in Eckstine's band. And Navarro proved to be more than capable. Bebop became known as the first modern jazz style, though it was unpopular at its beginning.
In fact, bebop was not initially considered revolutionary. It was viewed as an outgrowth of swing. However, swing had introduced a diversity of new musicians who would shape the bebop era, including Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell, Kenny Clarke, Oscar Pettiford, and Gillespie himself. Through these musicians, a new vocabulary of musical phrases emerged. Charlie Parker developed methods of adding chords to existing chord progressions and implying additional harmonies within improvised lines.
With Parker, Gillespie performed at legendary jazz clubs such as Minton's Playhouse and Monroe's Uptown House. Gillespie compositions such as Groovin' High, Woody and You, and Salt Peanuts sounded radically different, harmonically and rhythmically, from the swing music popular at the time. A Night in Tunisia, written in 1942 while Dizzy was with Earl Hines's band, became especially notable for its syncopated bass line, a feature that remains common in modern music.
Woody and You was recorded in a session led by Coleman Hawkins, with Gillespie appearing as a featured sideman on February 16, 1944. This session became the first formal recording of bebop. Gillespie also appeared in recordings by the Billy Eckstine Band. And in early 1945, he began recording prolifically as both a band leader and sideman. He was not content to allow bebop to remain confined to small groups performing in intimate clubs.
On June 22, 1945, one of his small groups performed a concert at New York's Town Hall, introducing bebop to a much broader audience. Recordings of that concert were eventually released in 2005. By late 1945, Gillespie began organizing big bands once again. In December 1945, Dizzy Gillespie and his Bebop Six, which included Charlie Parker, began an extended engagement at Billy Berg's club in Los Angeles. The reception was mixed, and the band ultimately disbanded. In February 1946, Gillespie signed a contract with the Bluebird label, gaining the distribution power of RCA Records for his music.
That same year, he and his big band appeared as headliners in the film Jiven and Bebop. After his work with Parker, Gillespie continued leading small combos, including groups that featured Milt Jackson, John Coltrane, Lalo Schifrin, Ray Brown, Kenny Clark, James Moody, J.J. Johnson, and Yusuf Lateef. Beginning in 1947, he assembled highly successful big bands, with arrangements by Tad Dameron, Gil Fuller, and George Russell. Gillespie and his orchestras helped popularize bebop, and he became a living symbol of the new music.
His big bands of the late 1940s also featured Cuban rumberos, Chano Pozo, and Sabu Martinez, sparking a growing interest in Afro-Cuban jazz. Gillespie frequently appeared as a soloist with Norman Grantz's Jazz at the Philharmonic. He and his bebop orchestra were featured stars at the 4th Cavalcade of Jazz Concert, held at Wrigley Field in Los Angeles on September 12, 1948. The event was produced by Leon Heflin Sr.
The program description praised the musicianship, inventive technique, and daring of this young man, stating that he had created a new style defined by off-the-chord solo gymnastics. Also performing that day were Frankie Lane, Little Miss Cornshucks, the Sweethearts of Rhythm, the Honey Drippers, Big Joe Turner, Jimmy Witherspoon, the Blenders, and the Sensations. In 1948, Gillespie was involved in a traffic accident. The bicycle he was riding was struck by an automobile. He suffered minor injuries, but discovered that he could no longer reach the B-flat above high C.
He won the legal case that followed, but the jury awarded him only $1,000, citing his high earnings up to that point. In 1951, Gillespie founded his own record label, DG Records. The label closed in 1953. The Bent Trumpet, Global Tours, and Afro-Cuban Jazz. On January 6, 1953, Gillespie threw a birthday party for his wife Lorraine at Snooki's, a club in Manhattan. During the celebration, the bell of his trumpet was accidentally bent upward.
Instead of being upset, Gillespie discovered that he liked the altered sound produced by the damaged instrument. He later had a custom trumpet made with a 45-degree raised bell. This distinctive design would become his trademark. In 1956, Gillespie organized a band for a United States State Department tour of the Middle East. The tour was extremely well received internationally, earning him the nickname the Ambassador of Jazz.
During this period, he continued leading a big band that performed throughout the United States. Among the musicians featured in his ensemble were Pee Wee Moore and others. The band recorded a live album at the 1957 Newport Jazz Festival, featuring Mary Lou Williams as a guest artist on piano. Afro-Cuban jazz. In the late 1940s, Gillespie became deeply involved in what was then called Afro-Cuban music. He helped bring Afro-Latin American rhythms and musical elements into greater prominence within jazz, and even into popular music.
Afro-Cuban jazz is rooted in traditional Afro-Cuban rhythms. In 1947, Gillespie was introduced to Chano Pozo by Mario Bauza, a Latin jazz trumpet player. Chano Pozo became the conga drummer in Gillespie's band. Gillespie also worked with Mario Bauza in New York jazz clubs along 52nd Street and at major dance venues such as the Palladium and the Apollo Theater in Harlem. They had previously played together in the Chick Webb Band and in Cab Calloway's orchestra, forming a lifelong friendship. Gillespie played a crucial role in developing and refining the Afro-Cuban jazz style. Some musicians classified Afro-Cuban jazz as a modern style, while others described it as bebop-oriented. The style proved enduringly successful, maintaining popularity and consistently attracting audiences who wanted not only to listen, but to dance.
Among Gillespie's most famous contributions to Afro-Cuban music are Manteca and Tintindeo, both co-written with Chano Pozo. He also commissioned George Russell's composition Cubano B, Cubano Bop, which prominently featured Pozo. In 1977, Gillespie met Arturo Sandoval during a jazz cruise to Havana. Sandoval later toured with Gillespie. And in 1990, he defected in Rome while traveling with Gillespie and the United Nations Orchestra.
Final years. During the 1980s, Gillespie led the United Nations Orchestra. For 3 years, vocalist Flora Purim toured with the ensemble. She later credited Gillespie with deepening her understanding of jazz.
In 1982, Motown musician Stevie Wonder sought Gillespie out to perform the trumpet solo on Wonder's hit single Do I Do. Gillespie also appeared in the film The Winter in Lisbon, released in 1992 and re-released in 2004 under the title El Invierno en Lisboa. The soundtrack album featuring Gillespie was recorded in 1990 and released in 1991. The film tells the story of a jazz pianist who falls in love with a dangerous woman while in Portugal, performing with an American expatriate jazz band.
In December 1991, during an engagement at Kimball's East in Emeryville, California, Gillespie suffered a medical crisis. It was later revealed to be pancreatic cancer. He performed one additional night, but canceled the remainder of the tour for medical reasons. bringing an end to his 56-year touring career.
He led his final recording session on January the 25th, 1992. On November 26, 1992, Carnegie Hall hosted a celebration of Gillespie's 75th birthday. The event was held in conjunction with the Second Baha'i World Congress, marking the centenary of the passing of Baha'u'llah. This would have been Gillespie's 33rd appearance at Carnegie Hall.
The lineup included John Faddis, James Moody, Paquito de Rivera, and the Mike Longo Trio, featuring Ben Brown on bass and Mickey Roker on drums. Gillespie was too ill to attend.
One observer noted, the musicians played their hearts out for him, no doubt suspecting that he would not perform again. Each musician paid tribute to their friend, this great soul and innovator in the world of jazz. Death, politics, religion, and personal life.
A longtime resident of Englewood, New Jersey, Gillespie died of pancreatic cancer on January 6, 1993, at the age of 75.
His funeral was held on January 12th at St. Peter's Lutheran Church. Singer Roberta Flack performed Amazing Grace. He was buried in Flushing Cemetery in Queens. His grave is unmarked.
Politics and religion. In 1962, Gillespie and actor George Matthews appeared in an animated short film titled The Hole, created by John and Faith Hubley. Released during the same year as the Cuban Missile Crisis. The film featured audio from an improvised conversation between the two men, debating the causes of accidents and the terrifying possibility of accidentally launching nuclear weapons. The film won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film the following year.
During the 1964 United States presidential campaign, Gillespie humorously put himself forward as an independent write-in candidate. He promised that if elected, the White House would be renamed the Blues House. He proposed a cabinet that included Duke Ellington as Secretary of State, Miles Davis as Director of the CIA, Max Roach as Secretary of Defense, Charles Mingus as Secretary of Peace, Ray Charles as Librarian of Congress, Louis Armstrong as Secretary of Agriculture, Mary Lou Williams as Ambassador to the Vatican, Thelonious Monk as Traveling Ambassador, and Malcolm X as Attorney General.
He said his running mate would be comedian Phyllis Diller. Campaign buttons had been manufactured years earlier by his booking agency as a joke. But proceeds from the campaign supported civil rights organizations, including the Congress of Racial Equality, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and Martin Luther King Jr.
In later years, these buttons became collector's items. In 1971, he announced that he would run again, but withdrew before the election. Shortly after the death of Charlie Parker, Gillespie encountered an audience member following a performance. They discussed the oneness of humanity and the elimination of racism from the perspective of the Baha'i faith.
Deeply affected by the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, Gillespie became a member of the Baha'i faith that same year.
The universalist philosophy of the religion encouraged him to see himself increasingly as a global citizen and humanitarian. expanding his engagement with his African heritage. His spirituality cultivated generosity, discipline, inner strength, and what author Nat Hentoff described as soul force. Gillespie often spoke about the Baha'i faith during his international travels. He is honored with weekly jazz sessions at the New York Baha'i Center in the Memorial Auditorium.
Personal life. Gillespie married dancer Lorraine Willis in Boston on May 9, 1940. They remained together until his death in 1993. Lorraine converted to Catholicism in 1957, alongside Mary Lou Williams. She managed both his business and personal affairs.
The couple had no children together. However, Gillespie fathered a daughter, jazz singer Jeannie Bryson, born in 1958 from an affair with songwriter Connie Bryson. He met Connie Bryson, a Juilliard-trained pianist, at the jazz club Birdland in New York City. In the mid-1960s, Gillespie settled in Inglewood, New Jersey, with his wife.
The local public high school, Dwight Morrow High School, later named its auditorium in his honor, the Dizzy Gillespie Auditorium.
Artistry, style, the bent trumpet, awards, and legacy. Gillespie has often been described as the sound of surprise. The rough guide to jazz characterizes his musical approach in vivid detail. The whole essence of a Gillespie solo was cliff-hanging suspense. The phrases and the angle of the approach were perpetually varied. Breakneck runs were followed by pauses, by huge interval leaps, by long, immensely high notes, by slurs and smears and bluesy phrases. He always took listeners by surprise, always shocking them
with a new thought. His lightning reflexes and superb ear ensured that his instrumental execution matched his thoughts in both power and speed.
He remained deeply concerned with swing, even when taking the most daring liberties with pulse or beat. His phrases never failed to swing. His magnificent sense of time and emotional intensity stemmed from childhood roots. His parents were Methodists, but as a boy he would sneak off every Sunday to the uninhibited sanctified church. He later said, "The sanctified church had deep significance for me musically. I first learned the meaning of rhythm there, and how music can transport people spiritually." In his obituary, Peter Watrous described Gillespie's performance style.
In the naturally effervescent Mr. Gillespie, opposites coexisted. His playing, and he performed constantly until near the end of his life, was meteoric, filled with virtuosic invention and deadly seriousness. Yet with his endlessly humorous asides, his wide range of facial expressions, and his natural comic gifts, he was as much a pure entertainer as he was an accomplished artist.
Wynton Marsalis summarized Gillespie's genius as both player and teacher. His playing demonstrates the importance of intelligence. His rhythmic sophistication was unequaled. He was a master of harmony and fascinated by studying it. He absorbed all the music of his youth, from Roy Eldridge to Duke Ellington, and developed a unique style built upon complex rhythm and harmony balanced with wit.
Gillespie was so quick-minded that he could create an endless flow of ideas at unusually fast tempos. No one had ever even considered playing the trumpet that way, let alone actually attempting it. All musicians respected him, because in addition to outplaying everyone, he knew so much, and was so generous in sharing that knowledge.
The bent trumpet. Gillespie's trademark trumpet featured a bell bent upward at a 45-degree angle. Rather than projecting straight ahead like a conventional trumpet. According to his autobiography, this modification originated accidentally. On January 6, 1953, during a birthday party for his wife Lorraine at Snooky's in Manhattan, dancers Stump and Stumpy fell onto his trumpet while it rested on its stand.
The damage bent the bell upward. When he played it afterward, Gillespie discovered that the altered shape changed the tone of the instrument. He liked the new sound so much that he decided to keep it. The next day he had the trumpet repaired, but he could not forget the tone it had produced.
He later asked the Martin Company to manufacture a trumpet with a permanently bent bell, based on a sketch drawn by Lorraine. From that point forward, he performed exclusively with an upturned bell trumpet. By June 1954, he was using a professionally manufactured version of this design. And it became one of the most recognizable visual signatures in jazz history. These custom instruments were produced for him by Martin beginning in 1954, by King Musical Instruments beginning in 1972, and later by Reynold Schilker beginning in 1982. The latter being a gift from John Faddis. Gillespie preferred mouthpieces made by Al Cass.
In December 1986, he donated his 1972 King Silver Flare trumpet, along with a Cass mouthpiece,
to the National Museum of American History. In April 1995, one of his Martin trumpets was auctioned at Christie's in New York City, alongside instruments used by Coleman Hawkins, Jimi Hendrix, and Elvis Presley. An image of Gillespie's trumpet was chosen for the cover of the auction catalog. The instrument sold for $63,000. The proceeds were used to benefit jazz musicians battling cancer.
Awards and honors. In 1989, Gillespie received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. The following year, at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. During ceremonies celebrating the centennial of American jazz, he was honored with the Kennedy Center Honors Award.
He also received the Duke Ellington Award from the American Society of Composers, Authors and Publishers, recognizing 50 years of achievement as a composer, performer, and bandleader. In 1989, he was awarded an honorary doctorate of music from Berklee College of Music. In 1991, he received the Golden Plate Award from the American Academy of Achievement, presented by Wynton Marsalis. In 1993, he was awarded the Polar Music Prize in Sweden.
In 2002, he was posthumously inducted into the International Latin Music Hall of Fame, recognizing his contributions to Afro-Cuban music. On December 31st, 2006, he was honored in the event A Jazz New Year's Eve, Freddie Cole and the Dizzy Gillespie All-Star Big Band, held at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. In 2014, he was inducted into the New Jersey Hall of Fame.
In popular culture, Samuel E. Wright portrayed Dizzy Gillespie in the 1988 film Bird, which focused on the life of Charlie Parker. Kevin Hanchard depicted Gillespie in the 2015 Chet Baker biopic Born to be Blue. Charles S. Dutton portrayed him in the 2000 film For Love or Country, the Arturo Sandoval story,